Before I say anything else, I want you to think about this. You meet someone from a country you have never visited. You have seen that country on the news. You have read about it in one book. And now you think you know what that country is like. You don't. You have a single story. And according to one of the most watched TED Talks in history, that single story is dangerous. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's speech has been watched over 30 million times. It is on your IGCSE paper. And if you know how to analyze it properly, it is one of the richest texts you will ever get to write about. In this video, I am going to break down the techniques examiners love to see. I will give you 3 full peel paragraphs you can screenshot and learn. And I will tell you where to get the complete study pack with every technique, every quote, and a full model answer. Let's go. Her purpose is not just to inform. It is to challenge, to inspire, and to connect. Every single technique she uses serves one of those 3 goals. Write that down. Challenge. Inspire. Connect. Those 3 words are your compass for every paragraph you write. Before we analyze anything, you need to understand who Adichie is and why this matters. Context unlocks your analysis every time. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie is a Nigerian writer, born in Enugu in 1977. She grew up in the university town of Nsukka, reading British and American children's books that had no characters who looked like her, lived like her, or came from anywhere near where she was from. She moved to the United States to study. And there she experienced firsthand what she calls the single story, the limited, narrow version of Africa that Americans had built from a handful of news stories and books. This text is a TED Talk she gave in 2009. It has now been watched over 30 million times. That number alone tells you this argument connects with people all over the world. And here is the most important thing for your exam. Her purpose is not just to inform. It is to challenge, to inspire, and to connect. Every single technique she uses serves one of those 3 goals. Write that down. Challenge. Inspire. Connect. Those 3 words are your compass for every paragraph you write. Technique number 1. The personal anecdote. And in this text, Adichie uses it brilliantly. She opens her TED Talk not with statistics, not with a political argument, but with a memory. She describes growing up in Nigeria reading only British and American children's books. And she writes about characters, and I want you to look at this carefully, whose kinky hair could not form ponytails. Just 6 words. But those 6 words are doing enormous work. Think about what Adichie is telling us. As a child, every single book she read featured characters who looked nothing like her. Hair that would not form ponytails. Crayon illustrations that showed nothing of her world. And without even realizing it, she absorbed the message, stories are for people who don't look like me. Now, most students read that and write, she uses an anecdote to make it personal. 3 marks, maybe 4. Here is how you get 8. Zoom in on the specific detail. The phrase kinky hair is not just descriptive. It is painful. It captures the gap between who she was and who the stories said she should be. The word kinky carries connotations of difference, of not fitting, of being excluded from the story literally and figuratively. And the fact that this is childhood memory, not adult theory, is crucial. We believe her completely. This is not an argument. This is lived experience. That gives her credibility that no statistic ever could. Here is your peel paragraph. Point. Adichie uses a personal anecdote to establish credibility and create immediate empathy in her audience. Evidence. She describes growing up reading books featuring characters whose kinky hair could not form ponytails. Explain. The childlike detail of the phrase kinky hair captures the painful gap between the books she read and who she was. The audience feels the impact of exclusion on a young child, how a single story tells a child they are not the subject of literature. Because this is lived childhood experience, not abstract argument, the audience believes her completely. Link. This shows Adichie's purpose is to challenge the audience's assumptions, making them feel the danger of the single story not through statistics, but through the truth of her own life. That is a top-mark paragraph. Personal anecdote is almost always the best technique to start with in this text, and now you know exactly what to say about it. Technique 2. Repetition. And this is the emotional core of the entire speech. At the climax of her TED Talk, after taking the audience through personal memory, through anger, through examples of single-story thinking from Nigeria to Mexico to her own university experience, Adichie delivers these two sentences. Stories matter. Many stories matter. That is it. Just 4 words each. And yet they are the most powerful moment in the whole text. Let me show you why. First, the sentences are short. Deliberately short. After a speech full of stories and examples and arguments, suddenly everything stops. The pace drops to almost nothing. And when pace drops, the audience pays attention. Second, look at what is being repeated. The word stories appears twice. The word matter appears twice. And what does matter mean? It means important. It means significant. It means, pay attention to this. But it is not just the repetition of the words. It is the structure. The first sentence states the fact. Stories matter. The second sentence expands it, not just stories, but many stories matter. The repetition is also an escalation. From one to many. From limited to expansive. From the single story to all the stories. Here is your peel. Point. Adichie uses repetition to deliver the emotional and intellectual core of her argument. Evidence. She writes, stories matter. Many stories matter. Explain. The short, punchy sentences create a moment of stillness after the complexity of the speech. The repetition of stories and matter gives these lines enormous emotional weight. They feel like a statement of fact, clear and impossible to argue with. The escalation from one sentence to the next mirrors the speech's central argument. We must move from a single story to many stories. Link. This shows Adichie's purpose is to inspire. She wants the audience to leave not with information, but with a feeling they cannot shake. The repetition ensures this moment stays with them long after the speech ends. Can you feel the difference between a basic comment and that kind of analysis? That is what the top band looks like. Technique 3. Emotive language. And this is where Adichie stops being gentle and starts being forceful. She describes those most at risk from single-story thinking as impressionable and vulnerable. Then she uses the verbs fleecing and sneaking. Now, those last 2 words are extraordinary. Let me tell you why. Fleece means to strip someone of their resources. It is what happens when a sheep is sheared. It has criminal connotations. It implies someone is being taken advantage of, robbed of something that was rightfully theirs. And sneaking, that word suggests something hidden, something underhanded. Something that happens without the victim realizing. Together, fleecing and sneaking suggest that the single story is not just limiting, it is predatory. It takes from people without their knowledge or consent. It steals their complexity. It robs them of their full humanity. And look at who is described as impressionable and vulnerable. Young people. People with less power. The people who have the least ability to question or resist the stories they are given. Adichie is not just describing a problem. She is making the audience feel outrage. And outrage is what she needs them to feel, because outrage is what leads to change. Your peel paragraph. Point. Adichie uses emotive language to convey the real damage single stories can cause. Evidence. She describes those at risk as impressionable and vulnerable and uses verbs like fleecing and sneaking. Explain. The word impressionable suggests young, unformed minds that absorb stories before they have the tools to question them. The verbs fleecing and sneaking carry criminal connotations. They imply that the single story is not merely limiting but actively predatory, stealing complexity and humanity from those who cannot defend themselves. Link. This shows Adichie's purpose is to challenge her audience, not just to inform them about the problem, but to make them feel anger and moral urgency. She wants them to leave not just knowing about the single story, but determined to reject it. 3 techniques. 3 perfect paragraphs. If those 3 were your whole answer, you are already looking at a very strong mark. Now let me show you what else is in the full pack. There are 5 more techniques in this text that examiners absolutely love to see, and I am going to give you enough to know they exist and why they matter. Inclusive pronouns. Near the end of the speech, Adichie shifts from I to we. She says, "We can reject the single story. That one word we brings the entire audience into the solution. It is no longer her problem, it is everyone's responsibility." Full analysis in the study pack. Juxtaposition. She contrasts a single story with a few personal stories. That contrast makes the single story feel not just limited, but actively wrong, like a meal with only one ingredient when a feast was possible. Full breakdown in the pack. Syntactic parallelism. She writes, "We never talked about the weather, and then they talked a lot about the weather." Parallel sentence structures with opposite meanings. It is elegant, it is precise, and examiners love when students spot it. Full analysis in the pack. Humor. She describes her mother being obligated to read her early childhood stories. Gentle, self-deprecating humor that makes her warm and relatable rather than preachy. Full analysis in the pack. Childlike language. The details of crayons, ponytails, children's books. The power is in the innocence. These details make the argument feel personal, not political. Full analysis in the pack. And that is before we even get to the structure techniques. Chronological structure, circular structure, shift in tone, single-line paragraphs, direct address. All fully analyzed in the complete study pack. The link is in the description.